They said Grimhollow didn't sell people. Not officially. But I stood on a platform with an iron collar on my throat and a tag that read marked. And the crowd below didn't look ashamed. Pretty. A man called, "Too pretty for work." Put her in the kennels. Laughter. Coins. Hungry eyes. The auctioneer lifted his gavel. "Omega marked," he announced. "Unclaimed. Trainable. Worth a fortune to the right buyer." My name, Leora Vance, meant nothing here. The tag meant everything. 50 silver. 60. 80 if she can heal. The auctioneer smiled wider. "Hands that mend," he added. And the word mend made my stomach twist. They weren't buying a healer. They were buying what they could force a healer to do. I tried to breathe around the collar. Then a scream tore through the square small. Furious. Terrified. Guards moved. Then stopped so fast their armor clinked. A boy burst into the open. 4 years old. Maybe. Dark hair, wild. Blood smeared across his hands. Eyes too sharp for his size. He snarled like a cornered animal and spun as if danger lived in every shadow. "It's the prince." Someone whispered, "Don't touch him, Prince." Royal children didn't belong in markets. But this one didn't run to safety. He ran to me. He crashed into my legs and clung. Fists knotted in my skirt. Forehead pressed to my stomach, as if my heartbeat was the only sound that didn't lie. He shook so hard I felt it through my ribs. My hands hovered. Slow. "Hey." I breathed. "You're safe. I've got you." He didn't answer. He just held on. The auctioneer cleared his throat, trying to regain control until the air itself seemed to tighten. The crowd parted without being told. High King Kael Dravenheart walked into the square like a storm, given shape tall. Broad. Dressed in black, built for war. His gaze swept the platform. The bitters. The blood on his son's hands. Then he saw the boy clinging to me. Kael went still. Controlled. Dangerously controlled. The auctioneer forced a smile. "Your Majesty." The bidding. Kael didn't look at him. He threw a heavy pouch onto the platform. It hit with a dull thud that made everyone flinch. "Name your price," he said. The auctioneer swallowed. "Sire." "The bidding is still open." Kael lifted his eyes. The man's voice broke. "Name it." The king repeated. Quiet and final. 1,000 gold. The auctioneer rasped. A gasp rippled through the square. Kael didn't blink. "Done." The auctioneer raised his gavel. "Sold." Kael's voice cut through the word. "She's mine." It sounded like ownership. It also sounded like a warning to anyone thinking of reaching for me again. Guards reached for me. The prince's grip tightened until it hurt. "Don't," I whispered. But movement swallowed the word. Kael stepped close enough that I felt his warmth against the cold. His voice dropped low. "Meant for me alone. He chose you," he said. "If you fight, you'll frighten him. If you run, you'll die." He said die like it was simply truth. So I stayed still. They pulled me from the platform. And the prince refused to let go. We left Grimhollow before the sun climbed high. The road blurred into frost and stone, and the sound of hooves. The prince Talon. I heard someone call him, sat, pressed against my side in the carriage. Silent and rigid. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. But every jolt made his small fingers find my sleeve again. As if checking I was real. At a stop to change horses. Kael opened the carriage door himself. His gaze flicked to my throat. My body flinched before my mind could stop it. His jaw tightened. But his hands stayed steady. He unlatched the collar with precise movements. The metal dropped into his palm. Air rushed into my lungs like I'd been holding it since the platform. Kael closed his fist around the collar. "You will not run," he said. I met his eyes. "Do you think I can outrun a king? I think people do desperate things when they're scared," he replied. Then, colder, "You will not touch what isn't offered. And you will not lie to me." The words weren't a threat. They were rules lines drawn around something fragile. Why? I asked. Because the question burned. Why by me? Kale's gaze flicked to the boy. Then back. Because he chose you, he said. And I won't ignore what my son chooses. By dawn, Nightfall Citadel rose ahead Blackstone. Iron gates. Watchtowers, like clenched fists. Inside the walls, soldiers drilled in silence. No laughter. No softness. Only discipline. At the inner gate stood a woman in a dark uniform. Posture straight as a blade. Her eyes measured Kale. Then the prince. Then me quick. Ruthless. Your Majesty, she said. Nightfall is secured. Kale nodded. Captain Mira Kestrel. Mira's gaze dropped to Talon's hand tangled in my sleeve. Her mouth tightened. Your Majesty, she said carefully. We don't keep pets in Nightfall. The prince's fingers spasmed. And something in my chest went hot. Kale's answer was instant. Ice cold. She isn't a pet, he said. Then, for everyone to hear. He finished it like a sentence carved into stone. She's a boundary, and in the hush that followed, I understood the true danger. In Nightfall, boundaries were made to be tested. The first thing I learned about Nightfall Citadel was that it didn't welcome people. It contained them. They led me through corridors carved from black stone, past torches that burned too clean, and soldiers that didn't look up when we passed. Everything here moved with purpose. Even the silence had rules. My room sat near the prince's wing, close enough that I could hear the distant echo of his footsteps when he paced, but far enough that I could feel the walls listening. It looked almost kind, at first glance, fresh linens, a small wash basin, a narrow hearth with stacked wood. Then I noticed the door. The lock was on the outside, the window didn't open, and there were 2 faint scratches on the floor in front of it, as if someone had dragged something heavy away from the threshold before I arrived. A monitored cell dressed in polite clothing, a cage that wanted to pretend it wasn't a cage. Lights out at the bell, Captain Mira told me. Voice flat. No wandering. No visitors without permission. No singing in the halls. I blinked. No, singing. Her gaze didn't soften. Joy invites weakness. Weakness invites death. I swallowed a bitter laugh that didn't make it out. And laughter. Mira's mouth tightened. Same rule. She looked past me at the prince, who stood close enough that my sleeve brushed his knuckles. His face was calm, but his eyes were too sharp, too watchful. Like he'd learned that calm was camouflage. Pain is training, Mira added, as if reciting something older than she was. Fear is discipline. You'll do well if you remember that. I wanted to ask her who taught them that. I wanted to ask her why her hands trembled when she said it, but Kale was there, a few steps away, and his presence changed the air. Nightfall bent around him, not like love, like gravity. He didn't speak while Mira laid down rules. He just watched me, not with hunger, not with cruelty, but with the exacting attention of someone walking across thin ice. I caught him glancing at my throat once, where the collar had been. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He looked away like he couldn't afford to stare at his own choices. They assigned me a simple garment instead of the auction clothes, soft gray linen. No laces. No ribbons. Nothing that could be grabbed. Mira called it practical. It felt like uniform. I learned quickly that everything in Nightfall was designed for control. Meals at the same hour. Training bells that rang like warnings. Hallways lined with banners that didn't celebrate victories. Only obedience. Even the servants moved like ghosts, eyes down. Hands steady. Voices swallowed before they became sound. And yet the prince kept drifting back toward me, as if my existence was the only rule he trusted. Kale noticed. He noticed everything. That night, he summoned me to a smaller chamber off the prince's wing. It wasn't private. Not truly. There was a guard at the door. And the walls were too thick to be innocent, but Kyle stood closer than necessary, like he was bracing himself against something. You will stay near Talon, he said. He doesn't Accept people. I've noticed, I answered. Carefully, his eyes flicked to my hands. You calmed him in the square. How? I almost told him the truth that I didn't do anything special. That sometimes a frightened creature just needed someone who didn't demand. Someone who didn't flinch at the ugly parts. Instead, I said, I didn't reach for him. I let him come to me. Kyle's gaze sharpened as if that simple sentence carried more weight than it should. Before he could respond, footsteps approached slow, unhurried, confident. A man entered without asking. Silver hair, a calm smile, eyes like a predator's, beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. The moment he saw me, that smile widened as if he'd found something interesting to break. Kale, he said, voice smooth. You brought home a stray. Kale didn't greet him. Uncle. So this was Varric Thorn, the name I'd already heard whispered by guards and servants alike. Not with affection, with caution. Varric's gaze slid over me like a touch I didn't consent to. Omega marked, he murmured. As if tasting the phrase. Soft, I lifted my chin. Human. I corrected. He chuckled. That's worse. Kyle stepped between us by a fraction, almost nothing. But enough that my lungs loosened a little. Speak your purpose. Varric's smile didn't falter. Purpose. I came to see my nephew and his son. His eyes shifted to the prince's door. And to confirm the rumors, Kale's voice went colder. What rumors? That Nightfall has acquired an infection, Varric said pleasantly, then looked at me again. A soft infection. Heat rose under my skin. Sharp and humiliating, Varric clasped his hands behind his back, strolling as if this were his home. You know what mercy does. Kale. It spreads. It's like rot in the timbers. A little kindness here. A little softness there, until the entire structure collapses. Cut it out early. And you save the body. My throat tightened. You talk about kindness like it's a disease. It is, Varric replied, still smiling. In war. In leadership. In survival. Kale's eyes narrowed. The air shifted. Heavy and thin. Touch her, he said softly. And you lose the hand. Varric paused, as if surprised by the edge in Kale's control. Then he laughed quiet. Delighted. There it is, he murmured. The beast under the crown. Kale didn't move. He didn't need to. His stillness was more threatening than a sword. Varric's gaze flicked once more to me. And I felt the promise in it. I will test this. I will test you. I will test him. Then he turned and walked away, as if he hadn't just declared war with a smile. When he was gone, the room didn't feel safer. It felt like a storm had passed close enough to strip the leaves from the trees. Kyle exhaled through his nose. Slow. You heard him. I did. I said, you will not provoke him. Kale warned, though his eyes didn't accuse me. They weighed me. Varric believes fear is the only language that lasts. And you? I asked before I could stop myself. For a heartbeat. Kale looked tired. Not weak, never that, but tired in a way that made him seem almost human. Then the mask slipped back into place. I believe in what keeps my son alive. The words should have sounded noble. They sounded like confession. He didn't look at me like prey. He didn't look at me like property. Either not in that moment. He looked at me like a risk he had already chosen to take, and wasn't sure he deserved to survive. Night fell. The citadel went silent with the bell, as if darkness itself was an order given and obeyed. Torches dimmed. Footsteps faded. Voices disappeared behind doors that sealed shut like tombs. In my small room, I lay awake listening to the quiet. The quiet in Nightfall wasn't peaceful. It was hunted. Then the scream came. Not one. Many. A sound that ripped through the corridor like claws on bone. I shot up. Heart slamming. Boots thundered outside. A shout, Prince's wing. Another voice. Our harsh hold him down. I didn't think. I moved. The corridor was cold under my bare feet as I ran toward the noise. Guards crowded the prince's doorway. Hands out. Weapons half raised. Panic making them stupid. Inside. Talon was a storm kicking. Biting. Shrieking without words. Eyes rolled wide with terror that didn't recognize the present. His small body fought like it had learned that restraint meant pain. A guard lunged. I stepped between them. Stop, I said. The voice steady enough to shock even me. The guard snarled. He'll tear your throat out. He won't, I whispered. And I didn't know if I was assuring him or begging myself. Talon's eyes locked on mine. For a second, the feral mask cracked. Revealing a child drowning in nightmares, I lowered myself slowly, making my body small, non-threatening. I let my hands stay open and empty. It's okay, I said, soft as breath. You're here. You're safe. Nobody's hurting you. His chest heaved. His teeth flashed. He struck at the air like it was full of ghosts. So I matched him with calm. Inhale, exhale, breathe with me, I murmured. Just like this. His gaze trembled between my face and the guards behind me. I shifted my weight carefully and offered him my sleeve, not my hand. Something he could grab without feeling trapped. He lunged. His fingers caught fabric. He yanked me closer like a lifeline, and suddenly he was shaking, not rage now, but fear bleeding out of him in waves. I eased my voice lower. That's it, I whispered. I'm here. His nails dug through cloth into my skin. It hurt. I didn't pull away. Slowly. His screams fractured into broken breaths. His forehead pressed against my shoulder. His body went limp in a collapse that felt like surrender. That was when my gaze caught the mark beneath his collarbone, faded bruising. The shape of fingers. Old. Deliberate. Not from a fall. Not from play. My stomach turned cold. He wasn't born feral. He was made. I didn't let my face show it. Not yet. When his breathing steadied, I tried to shift back just an inch. Just enough to check his pupils. His temperature. The tremor in his hands. Talon's fingers snapped around my wrist. Hard. Panic flashed across his face. Raw and instant. Don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave. My throat tightened. I'm not leaving you, I whispered. Not tonight. Behind us. The guards had gone quiet, and in the doorway, Kale stood watching. His jaw was tight. Eyes shadowed. Hands curled as if he wanted to tear the world apart and didn't know where to start. For a moment, he looked like a man seeing proof of something he couldn't fix with a crown or a blade. I felt eyes on me from the shadows' servants. Soldiers. The whole citadel holding its breath. Whispers had already started earlier in the day. Slipping under doors like smoke. They said there had been an attempt on Kale's life once. They said the queen had died of argentbane, a silver-wrought poison that left no mercy in the blood. They said betrayal lived inside these walls, wearing familiar faces. I hadn't believed it. Not until I saw the bruises on a 4-year-old prince who didn't know how to be held without fear. Kale took a step closer. Voice low. Controlled. If you knew what this place did to gentle things. His gaze flicked to Talon's bruises. And something dark moved behind his eyes. You'd runs. I looked up at him. Then down at the child clinging to me like I was the last safe thing in the world. I whispered back. So softly it was almost prayer. Then maybe it needs one gentle thing to survive. And in the silence that followed, I felt it the moment the citadel decided whether to swallow me whole or change because I refused to break. The next morning, the citadel didn't wake the way a home wakes. It snapped to attention. A horn sounded once low, urgent, and every corridor filled with bootsteps that didn't echo so much as obey. The air tasted different. Too metal in winter, and something like impending violence. Kale found me near Talon's chamber. The prince was quiet for once, sitting on the edge of his bed with his small hands clenched. Eyes fixed on the door, as if he could will it to stay closed. The border council summoned me, Kyle said without preamble. My stomach tightened. How long? 2 days. Maybe less. His gaze flicked to Talon. Then back to me. Long enough for wolves to circle. He didn't have to name them. Kale reached into his coat and pulled free a dagger short. Sharp. Plain. Built to disappear in a palm. He offered it hilt first. I hesitated. I'm not trained. You don't need training to cut. He replied. You need the will to do it. I took it. The weight shocked me heavier than it looked. Like it carried expectation. Kale leaned closer. Voice dropping so the guards wouldn't hear. One rule. He said. If Varric comes near you, scream. The walls will answer. I tried to keep my voice steady. And if they don't, his eyes went dark. Then I will. He straightened. Every inch of him locking back into king and weapon and storm. But before he turned away, his gaze snagged on my hands around the dagger. You're brave, he said. Like it wasn't praise. Like it was a fact that scared him. Then he was gone. Not an hour later. The gates opened. Hooves thundered. The citadel watched its king ride out into gray daylight. And the moment his shadow left the stone, the air shifted.